Hello and Happy New Year. My name is Kate Anthony.
Hello,
Hello, guys.
everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks.
Before we went on, we were talking about Michigan and how cold it is down there. Susan, how
Yeah.
cold is it?
How cold is it?
It's like 30, maybe 30 degrees at the height of the day.
Oh, it's like a balmy day.
It is actually for Michigan in the winter. So
Well, as you can see in
actually
Florida,
go out,
I'm wearing
like,
a very heavy jacket because it is chilly here.
chilly,
Today.
yeah, 70.
No, it got down. It was 43 this morning,
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
but it'll be 60 tomorrow. Before we get into our guest, it just happens today to fall on National Divorce Day. And for somebody who understands it, exactly what we're celebrating, I guess. Susan, do you want to explain a little bit about what exactly National Divorce Day is?
Yeah, I don't know if we'd say celebrate, but it is traditionally in the family law field, we have sort of recognized the first Monday in January. So whatever day that falls on this year, obviously it's falling on January 4th as National Divorce Day or Divorce Day. And that is because it tends to be the day that we have noticed anecdotally that the phone starts ringing or the emails start hitting our inbox. And I know that is true at least this year because I myself have been receiving emails, and I actually just interviewed a colleague in Connecticut, Eric Broder, who's one of the leading attorneys in Connecticut and New York, and he said his phone's been off the hook today with people calling, and it's usually the I need some information. I'm thinking my relationship isn't going where I want it to go, and it's time to get educated on what I might expect. I think it's a combination of the holiday stress that's just passed and New Year's resolutions and the beginning of a new year. And traditionally, January tends to be that time. So,
Not happy National Divorce Day. It's just National Divorce Day, January the 4th.
And look, it can be happy. I mean, in my line of work, right? I mean, I consider that, I think my divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me personally, right? And a lot of the women I work with, the freedom that they have and the happiness that they have on the other side, it's not a terrible thing. And it's also the possibility of creating something better, healthier, happier for their children to be raised in, which is, apropos of the conversation we're about to have.
And spoken from somebody who actually wrote a book called Our Happy Divorce. I will say Happy Divorce Day, and it can be it can be good. I want Susan to introduce our guest tonight because she has a connection. I had the honor, I'll say, of watching this 30 minutes of the most powerful documentary I think I've ever seen. The most powerful 30 minutes, anyways. And I was telling them before the show, I was in my office in tears, and it should be mandatory viewing for every single person going through a divorce with a child. Period. Hard stop. I know, Susan, you probably think, and Kate, for people who are professionals, yes, everybody should watch this movie. It should be taught in law school. And anyways, Susan, tell us about Ellen.
Yeah, so I'm honored to introduce Ellen, and I'm honored that I've gotten a chance to know her and speak to her. And try to assist with the project that we'll talk about. But Ellen is, an award-winning, recognized documentarian filmmaker, and in her career, she has done documentaries on sex trafficking and leprosy and genocide. She's traveled the world. And, they're all wonderful films. But then right in her own backyard, she did this documentary called Split, which is really just Ellen, who you don't see, but we know she's there. And really what you see on film are the children's faces as they talk about their experience of divorce. And there is something about looking in the eyes of a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, as they speak their truth about how their parents' divorce affected them, that is so deeply impactful that you will, I ended up in tears, and I've been a divorce attorney for 30 plus years. Kate was with me when I saw the film for the first time. We were at a conference last year, and it just impacted me so much. I now have all my clients watch it. And what you said, I hope we talk about this with Ellen, it's important for everyone who's tangentially associated with divorce to see. I think it's important for everyone to see, because even if you're not going through a divorce or your children aren't going through your divorce, their friends are, their families are. More than 50% of the world is going through a divorce, and we're all going to be dealing with that, and how those ripples go out. And it teaches them compassion and empathy for the situation as well. So anyway, I'm so honored and thrilled that Ellen is joining us tonight.
Yay. Welcome, Ellen. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, thank you. Quite a welcome. And thank you for that lovely introduction.
Well, it's definitely well-deserved. Of all the films that Susan listed that you've made, or documentaries that you've made, and I'm sorry if I offend by, I don't know the right words of filmmaker, documentarian, or you just make good stuff. But what's why this one? Why this topic for you in particular, when you've done across the gamut so many others?
Well, this is, this has been part of my life since I was a kid, since I was 12 when my parents got divorced. And, we had a very, they did the best they could, but in those days, really the MO was, let's not talk about it so the kids don't get upset. And so we felt completely isolated in this experience. There were 4 of us, and we were in a town where very few people were divorced. It was a very small conservative Catholic town in Rhode Island, and it just wasn't part of anybody's experience. And so it was actually very shameful for us that people around us didn't understand or didn't hold divorce in the way that it can be held now. And so that sort of added to our suffering as kids. We were embarrassed that our parents were divorced. We felt that something was horribly wrong with our family, and we, times have changed. When my kids were small, their dad and I separated, and 30 years later, sure, a lot had changed. It was a much more familiar occurrence in the culture. It was certainly more normalized, but unfortunately, it didn't feel like there was still a place for the kids to talk about their experiences or have conversations in a comfortable way. I saw that was true of my kids. They really gravitated in school to the other kids whose parents were divorced, to the kids who understood them. And I thought, well, something's not happening still. Something needs these kids need to be encouraged a bit to open up and start talking more openly about their experiences. And so that was the impetus for this film. Make a film, kids talking to other kids, as a way to encourage kids forth who were just sort of on the beginning of the path to a changing family, and to give a platform for children to really, say what's in their hearts and on their minds, with the hopes of beginning to shift the culture a bit. And so that was the motivation. Both from the perspective of a child of divorce and a parent of
Yeah.
2 children. Yeah.
One of the things that struck me, I think struck a chord with me, was the relatedness. And my parents' divorce was 38 years ago, or give or take a few years. But the emotions and what these kids were talking about didn't change, because I came from pretty high conflict divorce with my parents. And I don't know if that's something you related to as a child of divorce, and your parents, and some of the same feelings that these kids were feeling.
Well, my parents did not have a high conflict divorce, but they didn't speak for 35 years with 4 kids between them. So
that's one way of not having high conflict.
Yeah, right.
There wasn't a lot of, nobody spoke badly about the other, and everybody was civil. If there were graduations or big family, big life events. But unfortunately, my divorce was extremely high conflict, and I could see then how difficult that was for the kids, and I can see now that my kids are in their late teens. I can see the scars of that time for them, and you can't always have the kind of divorce you want. I was determined to have a good divorce. We were going to get together every Wednesday for dinner, and we were going to do this and we were going to do that. Well, you can't do that alone. You need to both be on the same page. And I remember my lawyer, who is a very prominent San Francisco divorce attorney for 40 years, and we became friends. And she said to me over dinner one night, I had a really tough case today, but it was nothing like yours. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, oh, yours is one of the worst I've ever had. There was nothing you could do to affect positive change. And I was shocked by that. I thought everybody's experience was the same, but in fact, it wasn't. And ours was seen to be on the extremely high conflict end of things. And so that was a wake-up call for me. So, yeah, one of the things that this film has proven to be very helpful in doing is opening parents' eyes to understanding how the choices they make have a real effect on the way their children experience the divorce, and how well and easily their kids move forward, into this new form of family. And I saw then, and I see now, years later, speaking to the same 12 kids, that those kids that came from very high conflict situations really had far more struggles and obstacles to overcome in their lives. Not universally, of course, but I can say that was the tendency than those who were in families that were really working to be cooperative and to share.
Kate and Susan, obviously from your 2 hats, your experience and your professional experience, what's so impactful about this film for you personally, and where can you see? I mean, I think Ellen said it perfectly, right? I mean, it's kind of hard not to watch this film and not at least get a light bulb in your head about the impact of the divorce or the divorce you're about to go through. So, Kate, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that, no matter how hard we try and no matter how much we do to sort of like form what their experience is going to be, they're still their own individual kids, right? They're their own individual people, and they're going to process things in their individual way, right? And we can certainly have an impact on that. We can influence it. We can't control it entirely, right? And I think, but it does show that there are important, just important lessons for all of us in terms of how we talk to our children, or the experiences that they have, and that we think that we're hiding things from them, and we're so not. And there was, the one little girl who talks about they were just screaming and screaming and screaming. They just screamed all the time. And she said, I mean, our doors were closed and we weren't supposed to be listening, but we could hear it, right? And I hear that so often, that like, oh, well, I mean, we fight, but like our kids don't really know about it. And it's like, do they like really? And that, I remember it just back to like how they're going to process things their own way. I remember with my son, when we got divorced, like we sought all the counsel, all the child development psychologists about how to talk to him. And he was 3.5. And so, he was really little. And how do we talk to him about this? And how do we present it? And when do we show him the new house? And how do we do all of that? Right. And it was scripted and laid out. And like, we did it perfectly, like by the book. And his experience, his memory of it now, and he's 15 now, and his memory of it, he's like, yeah, one day at dinner, you told me we had a new house and you gave me a box and told me to pack some things. And I was like, oh my God, that's so not what we did. Not at all what we did. Like, so not what we did. But that's his experience. That's his memory of what happened. So it's like, you're gonna hire all the professionals in the world, but they're gonna have an experience of it. That was the thing.
Susan?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, for me, the film reminded me of, I was a divorce attorney as a single person. Then I was a divorce attorney as a married person without children. Then I was a divorce attorney going through a divorce without children. Then I met my current husband, who had 5-year-old triplets and a rather high conflict situation with their mother. And suddenly I had these 3 little people in my home, and I was seeing a topic that I felt like an expert on, right? I'm a divorce attorney. I work on parenting plans every day, and then I was seeing these little faces when they could hear their mom yelling on the phone at their dad, or they just whatever would happen, right? And that's how the film felt for me. I sat there in that conference room or conference hall at a hotel, and Christina McGee, who's one of Ellen's advisors for the film, showed about 10 or 15 minutes. And I literally started crying. It was the little boy who said, one day my dad left and just never came home again. And you could see the tears in his eye. And that, for me, and it's just, there is a huge difference between thinking what's going on in those little heads, and actually seeing it and hearing it from them. And whether your child's experienced that, one of the things I think, Ellen, you did so brilliantly in this film is you have children who clearly had parents who went through a high conflict divorce, and there are children whose parents had probably a happy divorce or closer to that. There's a spectrum of experience here. So parents, children, viewers are getting it's not just one experience. There's funny parts. I mean, it's not all gloom and doom. The little girl who had 7 Christmases and thought that was just great, that's awesome. I've used that story when I talk to parents about the fact that they're going to have 2 Christmases next year, and maybe that's going to be okay for their kids, even if they feel awkward or uncomfortable with it, right? So, and the fact that I quote the film constantly as a professional. Well, remember the film, remember Slip. So for me, that is the beauty and brilliance of it, that it allows that peek inside the real experience. We all, I think, Kate, exactly what you just said, the children all have their own experience of it. We create something else in our minds about what their experience is.
Yeah, and it's a story, I think, that at least I think Nikki and I told ourselves is that kids are resilient. And somebody who experienced a high conflict divorce, I can, at least in my experience, wholeheartedly and without question say that is a bullshit story. That I think probably my parents and others tell each other to justify their actions. And it's pretty clear in this documentary, at least for me, that it's not the case, that this is an impactful life occurrence on kids. And Ellen, I don't know if you feel that same sentiment.
Oh, yeah. I think even in the best of circumstances, where the kids and the parents will all have a happier life, it's still a profound change. And so you can't, change is profound. And I think what you're all saying is really important, though. And we tell the stories of our difficult experiences in a particular way, and it tends to be in a way that we need, that reinforces something that we need. And that can keep us from actually hearing what we need to hear from our kids. And so I think we need to keep that in mind as parents, that, it's a very vulnerable time for us. There's a lot of hot emotions and, things happening in the midst of separation. And we create our stories. Some of them are justifications, some of them are self-soothing, that everything's going to be okay or that everything's going to be terrible. I mean, they come in all forms, but we sort of cling to these stories. We solidify these stories and we try to pass them on to our kids with good intention. What was really interesting about the kids in Split was that I could tell when they were parroting one parent's story or another parent's story, but
can you go a little bit into that and how you could tell that?
Well, there's sort of a mode that they went into, a sort of a parenting mode. They would almost change the syntax of what they were saying, or you could tell it wasn't child language. They were parenting a particular story from one parent or another. And kids do that. That's what kids do. And that's good that kids do that. That's how they learn. But a lot of times they're having this entire experience under that, which they haven't, they feel like they have to adhere to these stories. They need to align themselves with these stories in order to support their parents, to be in alignment with their parents who are having a difficult time or clearly going through hard times. And so I think that's why I hear a lot that, these kids in Split are so articulate. These kids are so brilliant. Where did you find them? Well, they're just 12 kids. They're kids who are given the space to actually tell what's really in their hearts, what's really on their minds. And that's profound. And so that's why it feels so remarkable, but it's simply their truths, and I had the same experience with my kids, having them tell stories about something that happened when they were younger, which was so radically different than the way I remember that event or the way that I tell the story of that event. And much like the story that you told about your son. And that's sobering. It's really sobering. It gives you pause. And so I think the film acts in that way too. Even though these are not our kids per se that we're listening to in Split, we recognize our kids in them. And it gives enough comfortable distance or necessary distance from our own experience to be able to take in things that we may not be able to take in very readily if it's coming from our own kids. We tend to get very defended very quickly, and our kids know that. They spend a lot of time taking care of us in the process, making sure that they don't make us feel bad or that they're being good kids. And part of that is adhering to our stories. And so Split gave these kids the green light, and not just the green light to talk about their experiences, but very intentionally, they talked about their experience with the intention of making it easier for other kids. And all of the kids were very aligned with that mission. They really wanted to help other kids who were just at the beginning of the process, who might be afraid or freaked out or don't know what to expect. And so when kids watch the film, they get the sense that I think I've heard many kids say they trust the kids in the film. They feel like the kids are telling the truth. They're not saying, everything's going to be okay or everything's going to be horrible. They talk about the hard times and they talk about the pleasant surprises, the things they never expected were going to happen, the good things, the unexpected good things that came from having a 2-household family. And so it's very comforting for the kids in that way.
Yeah,
they feel like you're getting the truth.
Or what I brought up, I mean, the idea of, the power relatedness. I mean, it's good to know, or at least comforting to know that what you're feeling or what you're going through isn't, you're not alone.
Exactly.
I think that's appropriate at any age, but you know,
Exactly.
and it showed one of the things that you know, the wishing part of the documentary that was powerful for me, that we, you know, at least Nikki and I talk a lot about in the book, is at the end of the day, it's never the kid's choice, right? And all those kids, I think all of them said if they had their choice, they would have their parents together. And to me, you know, Kate, I'm sure that that's something that you experience, and Susan too, in your professional life, that, you know, at the end of the day, this isn't the kids, you know, it's not their choice. And it's definitely, you know, but sometimes they get stuck with the consequences of someone else's choice.
Yeah. And I deal with that as a mother. You know, I have sort of rules with Emmett where, you know, the other day he said something about, it was such a pain for him because he's, you know, he's 15. He cares about how he dresses, and he's, you know,
he's got the coolest hair, by the way.
Yes.
Does have the coolest hair, doesn't he? I'll tell him you said that.
I know.
So dogs are barking. Sorry. But he said something like, you know, it was frustrating for him that he's like, I just want to be in one place because I've got, you know, my stuff here and I've got an outfit there and I want clothes. And I said, listen, none of this this isn't your choice. This isn't your doing. So if there's ever anything from my house that you want at your dad's house, then I will bring it to you. You call me and you tell me and I will bring it to you. It's not on you that your shit is all split, you know, and that you know, all of your belongings are across 2 households. So I said, I can't speak for your dad, but if there's anything that you ever need from his house, or if there's anything you need from my house, I will, you know, truck back and forth for you to make that happen, you know? And I don't think his dad really feels the same way, but, you know, oh my God. It's
craziness over there.
You're a child.
I'm going to mute myself now because apparently witching out.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we're lagging a little bit here. We're good? You guys hear?
Oh, there we are.
All right.
I was gonna say, I see a lot of Kate making funny faces.
Yeah, it was frozen there for a little bit, but
Great.
welcome to the world of live streaming. Susan, I don't know if you want to add anything then?
My dogs broke the internet.
You know, no, I think that is the key to, you know, get that, what Ellen just said about the space that it gives parents to hear, because the minute, you know, if you sit down with your kids, and I experienced this with my stepkids, you know, and they have even a slight criticism or a complaint or wish something had been done differently, you immediately in your mind will start, it just brings up a defensiveness, or at least we tried, or that's not how it happened, or you know, as opposed to you see it from these children who are universal children. They're children, they're adorable. You love them because you see them and there's all that emotion for them, but they're not your children. So you can actually hear their truth. You actually have no choice but to hear their truth because it's just them talking to that camera. But that is truly what makes it so impactful. I mean, you don't think these children are telling you a story. You think they're telling you what their experience was. And, you know, I think that is something, as I said in the open, you know, I just think that's something not only for children to hear or parents, but really everyone, because this is an experience that more than 50% of families are going through. So to have compassion and understanding for those who are going through it, the children, Ellen, you used a beautiful example of this, you know, and Kate, you were just talking about it with your son's belongings in different places. You know, little kids, when they invite their friend to come over and play, and their friend's like, well, I'm at my dad's this weekend, not my mom's, so I can't come over to your house. Little kids don't understand that paradigm, but if they've seen the film, the child who invited the friend over may understand that their friend is in this, multiple household situation, and just have a little more empathy for it, or a little understanding of it, or normalize it, or whatever that child might need.
Right.
Ellen, so
Jealousy.
when
My
you
friend.
go ahead,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Say that like my son's friends when they were little, they would be like, hey mom, can you guys get divorced, because Emmett gets to have 2 houses and he has like 2 of all these things, and at his dad's house he has this, and then his mom's house he has a trampoline, and like, I don't know, can you guys get divorced?
My 8-year-old daughter, because I don't know, the consequences, I guess, a happy divorce is that it sort of normalized it, or didn't make it this bad stigma. So she wants a stepmom and she wants a stepdad now.
Get working on that.
Because she sees all the benefits of what that brings. But Ellen, when you set out to make a documentary, did anything surprise you about this? Is this the outcome that you thought you were going to get? Is this the openness and the realness that these kids were going to talk about, or is it something that sort of evolves through the process?
Well, I think what surprised me most was how many universal themes there were between the kids. Most kids want their parents to be together. Most kids want the fairy tale, sort of storybook family with a white picket fence. They actually refer to happily ever after, white picket fence. And so there are these, norms that these kids are raised with that they've come to define as normal, and they have this yearning for, and that surprised me. I also was a bit of a naysayer when I read a lot of the literature saying, oh, so many kids feel like the divorce is their fault.
Yeah.
And that just didn't make sense to me. How could kids feel like this divorce is their fault? And yet almost every kid I interviewed would say at some point, I thought it was because I wasn't doing so good in school that my parents got divorced, or I thought it was because I was fighting with my brother a lot that my parents got divorced. My sound recordist, who was a 35-year-old guy, we went to do an interview, and in the car on the way home from the interview, he said when he was 10, his father turned around at the dinner table and said, "That damn fish tank makes so much noise." And then the next day he left and didn't come back. And Jeremiah thought until he was into his early 20s that his parents got divorced because he didn't do something about the noisy fish tank. It sounds absurd, but it's the way kids construct stories to make sense of events in their life.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Video.
What happened?
Not sure.
Turned into a robot.
Let's
We'll
see
get
if
her
I can
back.
do something about that.
Yeah.
You there, Ellen? Can you hear us?
I'm there, and
There she is.
There it is. Welcome back. Okay.
Hi.
anyways, my point being that kids struggle to make sense of things that happen in their lives. They take the evidence around them and construct a story. And that story, oftentimes, because they have such active imaginations, doesn't have a whole lot to do with reality always. And so that's why these conversations are really important, to encourage these conversations with kids. And the film is a really great way to sit down with your kids and watch the film. And there's also a comfortable degree of separation for the kids. They don't have to say, I feel upset when your girlfriend comes to the house. The kids can say, well, that little boy, I really liked when that boy was talking about how weird it was when he met his mom's new boyfriend. He's not your kid doesn't have to talk about themselves so much. They can refer to the kids in the film, and that becomes a very comfortable amount of distance for the kids to, and if you're paying attention to the conversation you're having after watching the film, you can get a lot of information and continue the conversation and say, oh, do you ever feel that way? Or, yeah, that must feel kind of weird. How do you feel about that? And so to have these somewhat anonymous kids as points of reference, it's really extremely helpful to sort of begin to open up the conversation with your own kids. And we have a really wonderful workbook, which is exactly written. It's a very kind of beautiful and colorful and fun way to have conversations with your kids while watching the film or after watching the film. It gives you prompts, conversation prompts. And so really, these kids are our little beacons of hope in terms of, you know, opening up and saying what's on your mind and being models for our kids, you know, to give our kids permission to really speak up and know that it's okay. And like you're saying, like you said earlier, understand that they're not alone. That is so important. They are not alone. There are so many kids that are having these experiences, and they're normal experiences, and these are normal feelings to have.
Yeah. One of the you bring that up, and Susan, I want to ask you something after about what you brought about your friend who watched it with her daughter. But before I do that, one of the things that stuck out to me most was at the end. I think it was towards the end. It was a boy, I think, who, you know, talk about this relatedness, and one, these words should never come out of a kid's mouth, and two, should show parents about the power of the divorce and the impact of divorce on the kids. But three, the power of relatedness of hearing it from another kid. And he said something, and I'm paraphrasing, but if you don't think that your parents love you, they actually do. And if you think they aren't happy that you were born, they actually are. You know, and to me, you know, I guess first and foremost, like I said, they should never come out of a kid's mouth. But the idea that somebody watching that can hear that probably is going through the same thing, because I know I did. But Susan, you had a friend, I guess, who you gave some advice to and didn't follow?
Yeah, well, so one of the things I do for everyone now, and I recommend, if you have someone or have a family member or a friend who's going through a divorce with children, give them this film, get the workbook for them. That will be one of the kindest things and the most supportive, helpful things you can actually do for them. But I give my clients and friends who are facing the process, I do give them the link to the film, but I tell everyone, the adults, watch it yourself first before you watch it with your children. And that's not my advice. I got that from Ellen and from Christina, who are much smarter than I am, because you will do the same thing that I did and Ben did and Kate did. You will start crying when you watch this. There is no way not to watch it. This is an authentic, emotional experience. And if you are in the process of divorce and have children, the idea that your children may be feeling some of these things, which they probably are, is very, very emotional for you. So give yourself a little space to watch it yourself alone. My friend did not and watched it with her daughter. And she said it was unfortunate because it upset her daughter to see her that upset. Mm-hmm. So I would say, you know, be cautious about, and it's very powerful. Be cautious. Watch it alone first.
And
then your kids.
Some parents are concerned, is this going to, if my kids see this film, is this going to upset them, or is it going to create more problems for them? Well, kids actually find it to be extremely comforting to watch the film. And, you know, I know kids that watch it time and time and time again, you know, and it's just very comforting, because when children are watching it, they're watching strong, resilient kids who have survived, that are talking about their experience in a way that is incredibly encouraging to other kids. It's different for the parents. When the parents watch it, they tend to have a harder time and a much more emotional time, because what is going through a parent's mind is, you know, how has this divorce affected my child? And it's very hard for parents to think that anything they've done is creating any hardship for their child. And so it's a very different experience for the parents and for the children. Again, I have to say the children are actually find the film very soothing and very comforting and very encouraging. The kids laugh, they get so engaged. It's like the way the kids almost react to the screen. It's like they're drawn to the screen because they're identifying so strongly with these kids, and the kids are telling funny stories, they're telling poignant stories, and it just seems to be a very comforting experience for the kids.
Yeah, and I don't know, Kate and Susan, love to get your feedback, but from a somebody who's not a professional and not a lawyer, not a coach, but I think I could make the argument that you could do more damage and cause more hardship. Helen, in your experience, your parents didn't talk about it. My parents didn't talk about it. And probably more damage can be done if you start treating the divorce like a mushroom, keeping it in the dark and feeding it shit, right? And so, Kate, you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, this is exactly why I don't eat mushrooms, by the way. But besides that, 100%. I mean, I talk about this with my clients ad nauseum, where they're like, they've got small children and they're going back and forth, and I say, have you actually spoken to them about what's happening? Have you had the conversation? Say like, well, we talked about this, but and I always say to them that if we don't tell them, if we don't name something, they make it up. And they put a label on this reality that they don't understand. And often it is far scarier and far bigger and more catastrophic than what's actually happening.
Exactly.
And so it's super important that we name what's happening and we talk to them about it, and we don't. And here's the thing. When we say to children, from like a child development perspective, if we say to a child, if we present them with something like, hey, are you maybe you're feeling frustrated, they will immediately say, no, I don't feel frustrated, I feel angry. Or right, they'll immediately say, no, it's not that, but it is that. And so you're not putting words in their mouth when you help them name their feelings. You're actually giving them the opportunity to name things. And I think that Split does the same thing. You're not putting emotions or feelings or even stories in their head. You're giving them the opportunity to identify and go, yeah, identify with that guy, what he said. That's how I feel. They're not gonna take on the emotion of someone that they don't actually identify with. Children don't do that.
Right.
So I think that it's an amazing naming opportunity for them. Watch the film, and and just in general, right? We have to name things for them. We have to give them opportunities. We can help them name them. We can tell them what's happening directly. We can show them movies so that they can identify and name things. Otherwise, their imaginations go all over the place, and it's generally worse.
Exactly.
Susan, what do you say to the parent who may be sitting there saying, I don't want to show it to my kids because I don't want to cause them more hardship?
I mean, I have to agree with what Kate said, and it goes back to to the parents who, with the door shut, were having a screaming match and thinking their kids weren't hearing it. Your children are feeling these feelings. The worst thing that you can do for them is not give them any way to express themselves. That one scene that I referenced with the one that made me start crying was the little boy who said, just one day my dad left and never came back. No one ever talked to him about it. No one ever told him what was happening. And it just goes back to, just because you don't talk about it with your kid doesn't mean it's not happening. It's not growing in the closet in the poop. It's happening. And it's like what, Christina McGee was on my podcast talking about having the talk with the kids about the divorce. And the first thing she said is, it's not the talk. It's a series of talks. It's a talk for the rest of their life. Divorce is not a finite time. Divorce is going to change the trajectory of all your lives. It is a continual conversation with your kids. What the film does so beautifully is opens that conversation for you and gives you topic points, and the workbook does the same. And that's one of the reasons why I love the sequel, that's coming, because it continues the conversation and shows you how it continued for those children. So it's like, it reminds me of, the parents or people who say, well, don't give kids condoms or birth control because if you do, then they're going to have sex. I'm pretty sure.
Exactly.
That's just what it made me think of. I'm like, if you think your kids aren't feeling the feelings, they're feeling them. Help them express them, right? Help them. And the film is there for you. It's a tool that's ready made for you. And by the way, it's going to help you too.
So the perfect segue into the continual, and it's just this film is now just not a finite point in these kids' lives. 6 to I think 9. Is that the ages?
6 to 12.
6 to 12. But now, fast forward to part 2, split 2. What is it about? What's happening? And tell us about the sequel.
Well, these kids are now 14 to 22, and they have all agreed to participate in the sequel of the film, which is them looking back 8 years later and sharing their experiences, and really talking about what really worked for them and what was very difficult for them. And so it's really a fascinating look at their experiences over the course of their entire childhood. And again, much like when they were younger, these universal themes emerge, around how they feel about the possibility of relationships, romantic relationships in their own lives, how they feel about, continued conflict between their parents, and how they've often chosen to align themselves with one parent or another just to get out of the war zone, so to speak. And so much like when they were younger, this whole series of themes are emerging, which will become chapters. The original split has 15 chapters. They're titled Missing, or Family, or New People. And so in their older selves, new themes are emerging. And one of the things that's emerging is kids feeling like some kids feeling like they lose their place when the parents recouple, or there are stepchildren or half siblings involved, and suddenly they've lost their bedroom, or they've literally lost their place at the table. And so it's going to be very instructive, I think, to parents and mental health professionals and the people that are working on, time sharing agreements for children. They talk a lot about their schedules and how their schedules evolved as they got older, and, what kinds of schedules worked for them and what schedules were difficult. And so I think there's an entirely new, huge amount of information that's going to come with the perspective of these kids over time. So we're really excited about that. We're in the editing room. I'm in the editing room right now as we speak, hammering away. The interviews have all been conducted, and we're midway through the editing process. And so onward we go.
And,
Go ahead.
well, I was going to do a little plug for, Gaia needs to come and talk. I was going to do a little, I just can't with them right now, plug for the fact that you are actually raising money right now.
That's right.
Or to finish the second film, which is amazing. And we have the link, I think. Can we post it? We'll post it in the comments maybe of the live stream, so that we.
Oh, that is a brilliant idea. I have the screenshot. It's on GoFundMe. But that is a brilliant idea, and we will do that.
Yeah.
But it's GoFundMe, split the sequel, and it takes money, people.
Yeah, every penny goes to getting this film out.
So important. And then the other thing I wanted to say, Ellen, I wanted to ask you, Ellen, is any spoilers about schedules? What do they say? Can you give us a sneak peek about what they say about schedules? Inquiring minds really
Right. Well, there comes a point when kids feel like they actually start to have a say, or feel like they can at least give their input about their parenting schedule. And it seems like the older kids get, the more time they would prefer with each parent. And so, some kids stayed on an every other day schedule for years, for most of their childhood, and they were very happy to evolve to a week on, week off. Some kids even were going for 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and they talked about this way of settling into home. And they talked about what home meant, what is house versus home, and how they needed more time to fall into the feeling of home in a particular household. And so, again, I think that, once they are busy in their external lives and less family focused as they get into their teen years, it's actually helpful for them to stay longer and have the consistency of a longer stretch with each parent. So that seems to be a pretty universal theme.
It's so interesting, because I'm dealing with that right now with my son, where he has started to say, I don't want to go back and forth so much. I want to, and he's been at my house for, I don't know, a month. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Because he wants to settle in, exactly as you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
And they seem to need that grounding because they're developing these external lives, and so they're busy in the external world. And so to have the consistency in the home world, for longer periods of time, they seem to feel is helpful, and more supportive of their schoolwork, more supportive of their social life,
I know Asher, our son, as he grew older, expressed the desire to stay longer periods of time at Nikki's house, my house, where it was probably 3 days on, 3 days off. We don't really have a set schedule. We do it every month. But he expressed that he wanted to do, 5 days on, 5 days off.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What Asher wants, Asher gets.
Yeah.
What is just from a fascination of growing up with a teenager now, and who was 3 or 4 when Nikki and I got divorced? Were they more reserved as older kids than they were in the first documentary?
No, actually not at all. The reverse is true. They felt less obligated to the parents' stories, and they really let it rip. I mean, and that proves some challenges for me in the edit room, because kids talk about substance abuse issues and other difficult issues that we didn't hear about the first time around, and they're very clear on how these issues have affected them, and they want to talk about it. And so one girl really, for a good deal of the interview, just really wanted to talk about her father's alcoholism and the negative effect that had on her and her siblings. And so, is that, yes, it's true. Substance abuse does lead to divorce. Is that how much of that needs to be included in this film, if any? I don't know. And so, we have some difficult decisions to make. And thank God we have some really good advisors in terms of divorce professionals and mental health professionals that are helping steer the ship here and helping us make those decisions so that we make a film that really is going to be incredibly helpful to teenagers, but also to mental health professionals, court professionals, mediators, people that are working with families. Because as Susan said to me when we first spoke, and it really stuck with me, nobody hears from these kids. Everybody's concerned about the kids. All of the attorneys and court folks are concerned about the best interests of the kids, but where are the kids? Nobody ever meets the kids. Where are their voices? And finally, we have these kids representing the voices, representing these kids that are anonymous in the court system. And judges have found it actually quite quite helpful, and have really championed the film for that reason, because it does bring the voices of kids into that conversation.
Well, like I said in the opening, I think I'm glad judges like it, and they should require well, I guess if you're in the court, it's a little too late, but that it require every state should require people to watch this. It's 30 minutes. I mean, and it could be, that pivot or different path taken after the film. When do you expect the movie or the documentary to be released, the part 2?
Well, hopefully March, April, because we're starting a new project then. And so that's sort of our time frame, is to really have this complete by then. And just so the viewers know, there's they can go to our website, which is splitfilm.org, and learn more about the film, stream the film, get a hold of the workbook. That's splitfilm.org.
Yeah.
Good. That yeah, that was gonna be my next question. If people want to watch the film, that's where they can get it right now.
That's right.
Okay. Well, thank you. I know that I make this joke every week, but it is what it is. I can promise Kate and Susan only an hour. Or I have to pay them overtime, and I can't afford their hourly rate. So, Ellen, where else can people find you or about the movie besides the website, social media, or anything?
Bruno Films. I have another site called brunofilms.com, BRUNOFILMS, and that's a website for not just Split, for my other work, and gives more information about my more international work, which is the bulk of my other work right now. So you can have a piece there.
Thank you.
Ellen also did an episode of Divorce and Beyond where she talks about a little bit more a deeper dive. And I do want people to know, if you go to the GoFundMe site, then you can actually watch a trailer that Ellen prepared of the sequel. So you can get a little sneak peek exactly of the sequel. And please consider a donation. Any amount is going to help us get there. And I think after hearing all this, you can hear how very important the first film is important. The second film, I think, even takes us further. And I just am I really would I want it to get out there. I want to help Ellen get that out there. So please, everyone, consider going to the GoFundMe.
Thanks, Susan.
Well, Ellen, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
The film, I mean, talk about packing a punch. I mean, for 30 minutes of just, as a parent, as somebody who went through it, as somebody who tried to take a different path because of my experience with my parents, it hit the nail right on the head. And I don't see, I mean, Susan, you said it, whether you're going through a divorce or not, this is a film. This is a 30 minutes of your life that could change everything. So thank you.
Thank you all.
And if you want to find Susan and Kate, I think I popped it up before a little early, but that is where it is. That's where they are. Thank you, guys. Happy New Year. And
thank you so much. Thank you, Ellen.
Next week. Yeah, thank you, Ellen.